Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and I'm back to say a few things about the book Dune and the film that just came out this year, the 2021 film. I haven't seen the original ones actually. I think I saw bits and pieces when I was a kid because my family, they're all fans of Dune. But we're going to be talking about the new one with Timothée Chalamet, and let me just say, I really thought that the film and the book worked so well together. I would love an extended cut of this movie, but there are a few times when I feel like the adaptation of a book is sort of the perfect pairing with it and not just inferior. I usually like the book better, but for example, the movie Cloud Atlas I thought worked so well with the book because there were things that I really didn't think worked completely in the book and didn't work completely in the movie, but together it was just like magic. And with this one, I think being able to see this world that you can picture, you can picture a desert world, but being able to see it was so phenomenal. Can I just say, I saw it in IMAX, and the sound and the costumes and the effects were so wonderful. I was just sitting there in the theater like thinking the entire time, this is so epic, this is so epic, like I'm gonna cry, this is so epic. And having just read the book, like that's my favorite way to do it, to read the book right before seeing the movie. It just felt so exciting to see it all come to life. But of course, there are lots of things that you can't do with film that you can do with books. So the film can't show characters' thoughts, because if you've ever seen a movie or a show that has just constant voiceover narration in order to get us inside a character's thoughts, it can be pretty cheesy. So I'm glad they didn't do that, but at the same time, that is such a big part of the book because we have this omniscient narrator, and the narrator can dive into anybody's thoughts at any point in time. And that tells us so much, not only just as a plot device, but as character development. Because we can hear Paul really struggling with knowing that he has this dark purpose and that he could potentially lead the world into ruin if they follow him. And he doesn't want that to happen, but as we might know, he's not much of a hero character. And I think casting Timothée Chalamet, the beloved Timothée Chalamet, was great, but so hard for people who love him because we want to root for him, but Paul is very, very far from perfect. And I understand he's going to get worse, but I haven't read the rest of the books yet. I've just read the first one so far, and I really loved it, so I do plan to keep reading. But yeah, I liked the casting, and I thought all around they just did a good job. Some of the characters, like if you were just reading the book, you wouldn't have imagined this person portraying them, but it was just phenomenal overall. I can't even think of who I liked the most because I thought the entire cast was just spectacular, and I wanted more from each person because they were so good, and the fact that some of these roles were so short just sucked. Yeah, so I didn't know when I started reading the book that the movie was going to be cut into 2 parts, and I hate that. I hate when films take one book and cut them apart, and I feel like it's partially can we just say The Hobbit? As such a huge Tolkien fan and lover of Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movies were so disappointing, and it felt like just such a money-grubbing move to make it into 3 films. Because if you were concerned about storytelling and being able to get a bunch of details in, then you would have split each book in the Lord of the Rings into 2 movies. But they didn't. And so The Hobbit was very disappointing, and they ended up just making up a bunch of stuff to pad the films because The Hobbit is such a tiny book and it doesn't need 3 movies. So I had hoped, when I heard that this was going to be 2 movies, I'd hoped that meant that we would get so much detail, and we would get to see every single scene, and even more so, like, I had a lot of wishful thinking going into it, and the movie was so spectacular and mind-blowing visually and every way, really, that I wasn't upset, like, actively while I was watching it. I wasn't thinking, oh no, they skipped this, they skipped that. It wasn't until after I left and then talked to some other people that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they did kind of leave a lot out. And the biggest loss, which is, again, something they couldn't really do anything about, is the inability to let us hear the character's thoughts. So, like, knowing that Dr. Yui was the traitor, we knew in the book, like, right away, because he's thinking it. He's like so upset with himself that he's going to betray Duke Leto Atreides because he wants to save his wife. And we know that's coming. In the movie, it's a totally different thing, where you don't know that it's the doctor that is the traitor. And I really missed the whole scene with the safe room, with all the plants and the water. I wanted to see that so bad, and I really hope that's in an extended cut. It just sounded, like, stunning to think of this desolate fortress on this planet that's all sand and wind, to have this green oasis in the middle of this building. I really wanted to see that. But yeah, the whole thing with the doctor and suspicion of Jessica, we didn't get to see that. And I guess we didn't really need it in the movie. I'm just one of those people that is such a book purist and wants to see every little detail. And I do think there were some that would have helped the film, such as the dinner party scene, which I've heard maybe was filmed, but didn't make it into the theatrical cut. I hope that's true, and I hope we get to see it, because the dinner party, I think, is so important. You get to see all of these people that, like, have nothing to do with each other, nothing in common, and they kind of have to make this work because now the Atreides family is being forced to take control of Arrakis because of the Emperor. I hate the Emperor. So you see this, like, really uncomfortable situation where these people are having to chat and also talk about pretty intense political things and how we can ease the suffering of people that have been just tortured forever by different powerful groups of people who are exploiting their planet for the spice. So I would have liked to see that, to see Paul have to kind of take over control when Leto walks away, and we never got to see drunken Duncan Idaho. And yeah, that whole scene, it would have given us some character development that the film needed, because I've heard that's one of the things that people are most disappointed about, is that there isn't very much character development in the movie. And again, I was too, like, in the middle of the IMAX theater freaking out to really think about, oh man, they're not really giving us anything about these characters. Because I had just read the book, my brain was filling in all the blanks, and that made the experience just completely different to what somebody would have experienced if they hadn't read it. And it's very hard for me to imagine not having read it, so I don't know what that's like. I'd be interested to know if anybody's watching this and hasn't read the book but they saw the movie. Were you confused? Because I did think, after I had, like, settled down a little bit, I did think, man, that would have been super confusing to anybody who hadn't read it. They did cut a lot of the technical terms, which was a little bit sad, but would have kind of bogged it down and made it an even longer movie. But there are so many words. Like, there's the whole glossary here that is all these definitions of terms that are brought up in the book that just, I was so confused for the first few pages, but you start to understand it. And I think in films, when you only have that 2.5 hours to sort of process this new information that you're hearing, it's way too short of a time, and you're also focused on visual stuff and audio stuff, and so a lot of these words that they did put in there, like Bene Gesserit, I feel like there wasn't enough explanation of that in the movie. For Inquisitarach, like, I'm obsessed with that term. But just hearing it in the movie, I think I would just be like, what on earth are they saying? I would need captions, and then I would need to go read an article. So it's definitely beneficial to read the book first. Just to think of this movie standing on its own without the book is a little weird. But I read that it was the author's intention for this to be, I'm gonna drop my camera, for this to be like very accurate to the book. I have the worst like ring light setup thing. I'm just gonna come down here now. So he wanted it to feel like more like the book than the previous adaptations had, if that makes sense. So yeah, a lot of characters had smaller parts, like the Mentats, and the part where Leto kills, or he tries to kill Baron Harkonnen, and ends up killing Peter de Vries. If I say any of these names wrong, it's so hard when you're just reading it. And I feel like they didn't say all of these names in the movie. But when he dies, Peter, there's not this big sense of comeuppance because his character was so small in the movie. Like, he was a much more sinister, awful piece of crap in the book. So that was a bit of a loss. And then we saw on screen Duncan Idaho's death and Liet Kynes' death. And both of those in the book, to me, felt really ambiguous. Like, the entire book, after we hear that, like, they think Duncan is dead, I was just thinking, but we didn't see it. We don't know. Like, maybe he got out of that fight. I really kept hoping for that. And part of me is still like, no, he's fine. Of course he's fine. But they really show it explicitly in the movie. And I missed that sense of, like, being able to wonder. And Liet Kynes' death. First of all, there's the fact that she's a man in the book, and then they made her a woman, which I thought was great because it's one of those roles that, like, it really doesn't matter. A lot of roles it really wouldn't matter. So they did such great casting. Have I already said this? Great casting. But in the book, Liet is, like, wandering in the desert and seeing his father, like, hallucinating about his father, who was this ecologist on Arrakis, and he's, like, having this sort of internal argument with his dad, and then kind of it just peters out, and I was imagining, hey, maybe he's gonna be fine, maybe he's just gonna have all these hallucinations and then he'll be fine. Come here, baby. And in the movie, it's this totally different thing where we see Liet actually get killed by a sandworm, which was very epic, and I did love her final line. What did she say? She was like, I only serve one master or something, and that's Shai-Hulud, which is the giant sandworm, the old man of the desert, or whatever he's called. I thought that was beautiful, but it was sad to miss out on that, like, hallucinating scene. That's pretty much what I was going to talk about. I just would have liked to see more of Paul's inner fears. There was that great scene in the still tent where, in the movie, where he goes nuts and like externalizes his fears about everybody screaming his name and like starting a war in his name. But there's just so much more of that in the book that I think is really necessary to. I mean, there's more than there needs to be, and they didn't have to show all of that. But it is worthwhile to. Ooh, garbage truck's here. It's worthwhile to have that happen a little bit more than it does in the film, so that I think it's more powerful and justified and earned when it comes up later that Paul isn't really somebody to root for anymore. He's kind of lost control of his ability to see what's going to happen and make the best choice. I really like in the book, you just get this sense of complete lack of control. He wants so badly to not become this evil figure, but he's being pulled by these, like, the strings of the universe that don't give him any choice. And yeah, I hope we get some more internal stuff in the second movie, which will be like the second half of the first book. I heard that they didn't film both parts at once, which I was so bummed about because we have to wait 2 years now. Like with Lord of the Rings, where they filmed all of them in one go. And then with this, they weren't sure like if the first part was going to do well, so they didn't film all of it. But that means that they can take feedback about this one, and if audiences thought things were like way too confusing or there's gaps or missing things that are important, then they can adjust for the second movie. We will see. I'm very excited, but we'll have to just chill for 2 years until that comes out. And in the meantime, I will read the rest of the books. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts about Dune, and not just this specific book, but what are your thoughts on film adaptations of books that you like? How do you feel about them? Because it is really a gamble when that happens. But in this case, overall, I thought it was really great and a stunning depiction of the world that Frank Herbert created. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.